$1 billion FY20 adopted budget. We're now projecting it to be a little over 1.075. However, there's two items I've highlighted. Investment income, that's one that likely third quarter we're going to be ratcheting down even a little bit more. As you know, right now the markets have tumbled. The Treasury is, for the first time ever, even out the 30-year, is below 1%. We've had 25% of our investment bonds called, and so we're reinvesting those, but we're reinvesting them at a much lower rate. And the Feds, of course, slashed the rates 50 basis points. So those are all things that, as of the earlier of the year, we were not projecting. So we're watching this very carefully. Fortunately, the other number I've highlighted is over on the personal property tax line. We're seeing a surplus there, mostly related to the number of vehicles we have and then data centers. So if we do need to lower that other one, we will still be within our adopted budget at this point in time. Your principles of sound financial management. So your principles have a diversification principle built into them. Basically, that says we want to maintain a revenue base that's diversified, and what that does is it helps during periods of economic downturn. For example, when the housing crisis took, because we're so heavily residential, we got hit pretty hard here in Prince William County compared to some places elsewhere in the country. And so that's one of your principles. The second one is the equity principle. Basically, what this says is we want to have a tax base and tax policies that are fair and equitable to all, regardless of income level, wealth level, and the like. So those are principles that are important. Take a look at those. Those are in section 3.02. The last one talks about administrative and compliance costs. What that means is when you adopt a tax, we don't want the administrative burden to outweigh the revenue or the benefit from the taxation. So we also look at the cost to implement different tax policies. I want to talk now a little bit about our comparative tax burden. So this graph here is a history of our average residential assessed value up through FY20. In FY20, our average residential assessed value was $372,000. You'll see it peaked right before the recession at $429,000. And then that orange line shows the history of the tax rate. For FY21, this is our land book as of 1/1/20. We saw 3.94% growth on residential during calendar year 19. So that brings our new average residential assessed value to $387,073. This graph here I really like looking at because you see that big line. We had this increase of 27% appreciation pre-recession and then a 29% plummet right during the recession. We have recovered some value. We're not back to that pre-recession average assessed value, but you'll see that more recent years it's hovered right around that 4% mark, between 3 and 4%. 3.94 being the most recent. And then for the out years, we've projected 3% growth each year. Next year, when we come back with our revenue estimate, we'll fine-tune the current year number because we'll have the sales activity for calendar 20. But we'll keep that out years. We tend to be more conservative. What we do know is eventually there will be another recession. It won't be as great as that big line that you saw because we're seeing much more normal appreciation. That green line shows sort of the average appreciation over time, 4.62%. And so we're much more in line with that. This next slide here shows a graph of the average real estate tax bill mapped against the average residential assessed value. And it's noted that since 2018, we've had a flat tax rate of 1.125. This one shows our land book. So our FY21 land book, which is our 1/1/20 real estate tax assessments, has now approaching actually $70 billion. It's $67.3 billion. It's a 62% increase since 2010. And then I've also mapped here the tax rate. You'll see the gray area is residential, so that's our largest component, followed by, you'll see the yellow is the apartments, and green is commercial, and it's going in the right direction. It is expanding. Public service is the small blue at the top. Public service is our assessments that are done by the State Corporation Commission. Those are our public utilities. And then there's a small sliver of black line just below that blue. That's our land. For a comparison of our land book with our peers, this is the FY 2019 land book, but you'll see we're about 76% residential with Fairfax 73%, and then it declines from there, looking at Loudoun, Alexandria, and Arlington. The black line is sort of the average residential, and our commercial now, the non-residential, is about 18.1%, so going in the right direction. This next slide shows our average residential tax bill. This is the FY20 tax bill compared to our peers. Our average tax bill was $4,488. That's the base real estate tax bill plus the fire levy. You'll see Loudoun is the silver line just above it at $5,100. It's been much more flat and actually declining a little bit. They've been able to lower their tax rate due to the success they've had with data centers. And then you'll see the three lines for Arlington, Fairfax, and Alexandria. Those are increasing. This next slide shows the comparative tax bill as a percentage of median household income. Well, the percentages are on the next slide, but this one shows how the comparative tax bill stacks up against the median household income. Loudoun, of course, has the highest median household income at $129,000. We're at about $101,000, and you'll see that $4,488, that average tax bill.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Vega.
Michelle, do you have a slide that shows for comparison the real estate tax for these jurisdictions?
I do. Let me scroll ahead here for a minute. Sorry, it's a long presentation. Oops, there we go. So here are the rates. These are the FY20 rates. We've included our fire levy because many other jurisdictions do not have a fire levy. So this makes it more comparative. What I will point out is this paints half of the picture. You do have to look at assessed values. Our peers do have higher assessed values. So to get at that total tax burden slide, we've taken sort of the average assessed value of all localities multiplied by these rates.
Is there any way that we can get that passed to the board, that sheet?
Absolutely.
Okay, and then, so if the advertised rate, which is typically what the county has historically decided on, if that gets adopted, our residents would then pay the highest rate of any county in the region, is that correct?
So it'd be the highest rate, but not necessarily the highest bill, correct?
Okay, thank you.
So, quick question, are these the advertised rates?
These are FY20 rates.
These are, so they're last year's rates?
Last year's rates,
Okay,
yes.
so it's not what other counties are also
Right,
doing
because the other
this year?
counties have not adopted their rates either.
Either, right, so this is last year's rates?
Yes.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Lawson.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
I just have, I don't want to ask her while she's.
Oh, go ahead.
So Michelle, so speaking of the assessed value comparison, what is the average difference in assessed value of, from Prince William to our neighboring jurisdictions to the north and the west?
I don't think I have that on a slide, but we can get that. We have it kind of embedded behind the
Okay.
sly I don't think I have that presented on a slide.
And my question
follow
to
up with
you
that.
would be, as an expert, what would be your rationale for that? Why our assessed values are historically a little bit lower than Fairfax? Or
Sure. So we're certainly farther removed from DC, right? The closer you get to DC, and the sort of employment hub would be one reason. There's more commercial tax base in some of those other localities. So again, closer to where you work.
Thanks, you just made my point. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair,
Supervisor Hanlon.
thank you. I think the two slides that I wanted to just piggyback on Supervisor Vega. One, and I think it's important to underscore, the assessed value is based on the assessed value of your homes. And so, and as you just pointed out, overall, the value of our homes are worth less in Prince William County than you have in Loudoun County, in Fairfax, as you get closer into DC. So as you get farther from DC, the average assessed value goes down. So it's a function of a couple things. One, values of our homes are worth less overall than you have in other localities. Also, too, and I don't know if you have this broken out. Do you have I'm assuming that the assessed value also includes townhomes.
Yes.
Okay, is that broken out based on how many townhomes we have versus other localities? In other words, do we have it broken out so we can compare single family to single family? Because if any community builds more townhomes, what's going to happen to the average assessed value? It's going to go down. And I argued this with Chairman Stewart a lot because he would act like somehow our average assessed value has something to do with what we're doing as a Board of County Supervisors. In other words, we're keeping assessed values low so it could be more affordable. No, it's a function on how much our homes are worth. And if we build more affordable housing, then our assessed value goes down. So I get a little uncomfortable just pointing to that as a function to say, well, everyone, we're getting the best deal here. And it also has to do with rate. And if you can go back to that other slide, because this is where we can compare a $500,000 home in Prince William County with a $500,000 home in Loudoun County, or a $300,000 home in Prince William County with a $300,000 home in Loudoun County. And I want you to keep this up here just for a second. We do have one of the highest tax rates, the highest tax rate on the list. And then I went and looked at what other localities are considering right now. Loudoun County is considering a 1 to 2.5% or 2.5 cent decrease on their tax rate. Alexandria, to be fair, is considering a 2-cent increase. Arlington is considering a flat tax rate, keeping their rate the same. City of Manassas is actually considering a 4-cent decrease. Fairfax, a 3-cent increase. Stafford, a 2-cent increase. And right now, Prince William County has an advertised tax rate that would be 4.5 cent increase. So we have the 2020 highest tax rate, and we would, if the advertised tax rate is adopted, have the highest by far. I mean, it wouldn't even be close when you consider. So I just wanted to underscore that it, like you said, it's a function of many different things, primarily the tax rate, because again, my $300,000 home, I want to compare it apples to apples, what I would pay in Prince William County versus what I would pay in Fairfax, Alexandria, or Loudoun County.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Bailey.
Just point of clarity, the 1.17 is a proposed, am I correct?
Correct, that's the
not-
ceiling.
That's the ceiling.
The advertised
That's
ceiling,
not
yep.
solid, right, Pete? I'm on point?
Madam Chair, may I respond to that since I wasn't here last week?
Sure.
Okay. Yes, that is correct.
Okay, I'm good.
But advertised tax rates are, at least in the past, have been given to give the people an idea of what we're talking about. If it was just about a capacity, well, then every board would advertise a tax rate of $100. Well, then we could have all the capacity in the world, and then we could decide.
Okay.
It's meant to give people an indication, an idea of where we're going to be. And I think that's why, at least I was so surprised that we went up so high.
Okay.
And then people would immediately say, well, we're not thinking of that. Well, if we're not thinking of that, then why are we passing it?
Supervisor Cameron, it's my turn.
Well, I was responding to you.
did.
You asked me a
It
question.
took
I
you
was
such a
responding.
long
I was
time.
responding. Well, I
No,
want to make
thank
sure I
you.
give
I
a
appreciate
full
it.
answer to your question.
I got it. I appreciate it, though. I really do. So we're not there yet in terms of finality of the tax rate. We're not there. But my question is this, just for clarity, when you talk about the value of homes, are we to say if we institute affordable housing, that brings our value down? Is that what,
I'm
did
not
I
saying
understand?
that. I mean, at the end of the day, we assess based on market value.
Okay.
So we're looking at comparable sales in neighborhoods.
Okay.
That's what's driving the value.
Okay, I just want clarity on that. That's all.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Canlin.
Okay. I want to make sure, because it's simple economics. It's not anything more. Now maybe there's getting a little bit, I want to make sure that we're speaking the same language here. If you bring in more affordable housing, it's not to say that the value of other people's homes are going to go down. I'm not saying that.
Okay, good. I'm clear then. I'm clear.
Because what we're saying up here is if you have a big pot of homes, the more lower priced homes that you bring in from what the average is, that's going to have declined what the average is on all the homes. And that's the number that we're seeing up there, is we're seeing the average assessed value over all the homes. So if we expand the pot, bringing in lower priced homes, that's going to bring the average down.
Madam Chair,
Supervisor Franklin.
if you don't, because
I can, go ahead.
it's directly relating to this. So it is true that the value of homes and the price of homes is determined by the housing market. We all understand that. The issue when we talk about affordable housing is you have to understand and define actually what that means. And each area may have a different definition of what affordable housing is. So for instance, when I think of affordable housing, that could mean affordable
moving forward and where we want to take this, we should be very conscious of that it's not a one-size-fits-all on how we get to where we want to go in terms of where we're pitting our housing stock at. Thank you.
Okay.
Look at that.
We digress, but thank you. You can,
Madam Chair, if I could interject one comment here.
Yes,
because this
Mr.
is a
Martino.
good conversation
Yeah.
and a lot of good points being raised. But as you're looking at this and why our tax rate is, why any of these jurisdictions have a tax rate, it's to provide programs and services. And as we are further out from the Beltway, clearly location matters. By the same token, our residents are expecting the same high level of and quality of service that we do in fact provide. So we do compare very favorably in that regard to the other jurisdictions in Northern Virginia. Otherwise, we could have a tax rate anywhere on the spectrum. It all relates to what we're trying to achieve.
Okay, so this slide, slide 18, is basically the prior slide now with the percentages dropped on for the comparative tax burden. I will note that Loudoun just 2 years ago was slightly higher than us. It's no secret that they have the data center effect going on in Loudoun County, and so they've now dropped their tax burden just a little bit lower than ours. This slide shows the real estate revenue and the personal property tax revenue per capita. This is per the FY20 adopted budget. Again, you'll see there in Loudoun, the personal property tax per capita is $1,000. Much of that is derived from data centers. Ours is $445, higher than Alexandria. You would see that because we have far more vehicles than Alexandria. It's a much smaller geographic land area, also near transportation hubs such as Metro. And then you'll see the real estate in the green. We're at 1,491, with the next closest being Loudoun at 2,076. Moving on to FY21. So this is the FY21 proposed budget as presented by the county executive. The pie has not really changed much, still about 65% real estate, 19% personal property, 6% sales tax. It generates $1.13 billion. And this is the detail of how that revenue is split with the county and the schools, and a portion going for transportation related to recordation. And then it shows the out-year forecast. Again, the out-year forecast gets retooled every year when we put together the next year's estimate. If we had a crystal ball, it would be perfect. We want the first year to be the most current, the most accurate. The out years will be less accurate as economic conditions change from one year to the next. This slide shows the proposed budget, how it will be split with the county and the schools, as well as the dollar increase and the percentage increase. And then also shows the 1.17 advertised. I will note this slide is slightly different than what I dispatched to you. I had to back out the boat tax piece, the $2 million I had in there. So I backed that out, and this has been updated. The 1.17 advertised also includes the 10 cents that got advertised for computer and peripherals, and the motor vehicle license revenue is included in those numbers.
Madam Chair.
Please.
Supervisor Vega.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Supervisor Callen. Michelle, can you show an increase in revenue if the current tax rate is kept flat?
Yes, it's about $54 million, I believe. Let me get to budget calendar at the end. Those are the only two
okay.
things. Yep.
I'm just inundated with papers up here.
Yep.
and-
Nope. Just slide 23.
Easy
That
thing
was
would
the
be
only
to
thing
Are
that
y'all
slow
changed.
down.
feeling that way?
But there should be a brand new set there there should be a brand new set of slides there. Yep. Okay, so moving on, if I may, the proposed real estate tax increase impact. So at the $1.145, it's a $242 average annual increase in the tax bill. That's based on an average home valued at $387,073. No matter what tax rate you adopt, you'll see that $165 of that is due to appreciation. So we saw that 3.94% appreciation during calendar year 19. $77 is due to the tax rate at $1.117. It's $174 is due to the tax rate. And then I've broken that out over on the right as a biannual increase because real estate's paid in a number of programs. I have a slide on each of these. I will go through them fast. If you want me to slow down, I will. I have 71 slides to get through. So, and I do talk fast, but just stop me if I'm going too fast and you want more information. So there's two types of tax exemption and tax relief. That is mandated by the state, by the General Assembly, and that mandated. And so you'll see we have 260 properties that participate there. Maybe one church may own more than one property, so we did it based on properties. Exempt. There is no net income or net worth requirements on that. It allows for exemption of a home and up to 1 acre of land. Tax relief for the surviving spouses of disabled veterans and tax relief of surviving spouses for members of the armed forces killed in action. 73 beneficiaries combined in those two programs, about $344,000 in real estate taxes relieved. There is a limit. It's limited to an exemption up to $383. Earth and sliding scale income requirements, and we have anchored to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development income limits. And you have to be for the either age 65 plus or totally and permanently disabled. Tax relief for surviving spouses of certain persons killed in the line of duty, known as first responders. That one is our newest program. It was voted on by referendum. 2 beneficiaries and 9,000 taxes thus far relieved. We have a tax exemption program for our volunteer fire and rescue members. They can have up to 1 vehicle relieved from personal property tax. We have 361 vehicles in this program, or $224,000. Tax exemption for rehabilitated real estate. This is one that encourages revitalization. And so there's 25 parcels, 71,000 in taxes exempt in tax year 2019. This is one that we are working very closely with Christina Wynn in Economic Development to help move our small area plans along. It does have a limit of $750,000. We're also looking at some things within the code of other tax programs we might be able to put in place to help really spur that large development that we want to see in revitalization areas. In this program, you do have to increase the value of the structure by at least 25%. There's one for solar energy equipment. So this is if you install some type of equipment on your home that is solar energy efficient and certified, you can have a tax credit for the cost of that equipment. We have 34 parcels or homes, 14,000 in exempt taxes. Our use value, tax value, this is our tax relief based on use value. This is an allowable program. This is our farming and horticultural and forestal and open space areas. We have 763 parcels, $4.2 million in taxes deferred. And I say deferred because if the property comes out of land use, there is rollback taxes that they're subject to. I think it's a 6-year rollback. Is that correct? 6-year rollback. And so we call it deferred taxes. Charitable organizations, there are 98, I think I say organizations, but it's actually parcels, right? 98 parcels that are exempt by less than 98 organizations. 1.8 million in taxes. This is one the board did put a moratorium on. Now any charitable organization goes through our community partner project program for funding through the adopted budget process. So this slide just summarizes up all of those tax relief programs. You'll see that, that it is a growing portion of our tax base. And this one then shows it by participant, number of participants, and the average tax dollars relieved by program, totaling that 34.1 million or 5.5 pennies on the tax rate. Moving on to business tangible and peripheral tax. So the history of the computer and peripheral tax rate, prior to 1999, we did have a rate of $3.70 per $100 of assessed value. To assist in the attraction of the tech industry and data centers, the county did lower the rate in 1999 to $1.50, and then again in 2001 to $1.25, where it has remained since that time. To give you an idea of the portion that data centers take up in our real estate land book, so of our real estate land book, this is the 2019 land book, which was $63.8 billion. $1.4 billion was from data centers. They're about 2.2% of the overall land book. And when you look at just the commercial and industrial sector, they're about 12.6%. This is a history of the data center revenue growth. We've had 8-fold growth in 8 years. So you'll see about 8 years ago, it was $5.4 million in total from data centers. Today, it's just over $50.3 million in revenue from data centers, with the largest growth being in that business tangible. This graphs, the orange and green lines are the data center lines, so it's graphing the business tangible in orange, the real estate in green, compared with the overall commercial growth. So you'll see the slope of the line, for example, in the business tangible, largely makes up that growth that you see in that red line up above. When you look at business tangibles, so we have a $2.5 billion personal property book. 66% is derived from computers and peripherals. And on the next slide, you'll see that 97% of those computer and peripherals are derived from data centers. There is a piece, about 3%, that's derived from other businesses. This next slide shows those jurisdictions that have adopted a new classification. State code does allow us to adopt a special classification for computer and peripherals used in a data center. I am recommending that we adopt that. There is one nuance to that, in that you cannot adopt a higher rate for that classification. So we basically would be advertising the same rate for both classifications. However, I think it's important to go ahead and break out in that classification so that as changes in state law occur, we have that classification in place and have the most flexibility to implement tax policies as you may want to. I have also shown, so that you'll see there's 4 localities that have already adopted that separate classification. All of them have either adopted our current rate of 1.25 or lower rates. Chesterfield, Henrico, and Virginia Beach are trying to get in the data center game. So you'll see that they have lowered their rates. And down at the bottom are some other localities that we've captured information on that have either matched our rate or implemented a lower rate.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Kinlan.
I thought I saw it somewhere. Do we have how much Loudoun County brings in each year for their computer and peripherals?
So I don't have it in here. It's about 390 million.
390 million. And what
390 million.
was ours on our computer and peripherals tax again?
Yeah, so about 31 million.
About 31 million.
Well, actually
well, yeah.
20 million.
Well, because is that 350 million including their real estate? Or is it just their
No,
computer?
that's
and per-
just their.
That's just their computer and peripherals.
Computer and peripheral.
This is, this business tangible, the 31304.
Can you,
Yeah.
Tim Leclerc from Department of Finance. So the 31 million includes computers as well as furniture and fixtures.
Okay. So I'm just trying to figure out apples to apples. So when you say that 350 million,
The 394 million
94.
that Loudon reported last year
Yeah.
was business tangible from data centers.
okay, so 31 compared to 394.
And they
Okay.
have how many data
Okay,
centers? 80?
thank you.
I want to say they have 86 data centers.
Yeah, 86 compared to about 20 data centers that we have in operation. We have about 60 total that, between land parcels and existing data centers that could actually eventually become data centers.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Supervisor Lawson.
Thanks. Michelle, can you go back to the slide before about the advertising?
The rates.
The separating, yeah. So you said that I know, I'm sorry, you went over this with me last week. I'm going to ask you to repeat it because I want to make sure I'm clear. State code already allows you to separate those,
Yes.
right? Then you said something about, well, what if there are even more changes, future changes? Can you go through that again?
Sure. So they do allow you to separate into two classifications. What they will not allow today is that the computer and peripherals used in a data center, that rate cannot be higher than another rate they would otherwise qualify for. So that computer and peripherals used in a business can't exceed computer and peripherals used in a data center. However, I think we should go ahead and implement the separate classification so that as state code changes, however it may change, we have the flexibility set up within that classification. Okay. So one of the directives I had by the prior board was to come back with a plan on increasing the tax rate for computer and peripherals. So I have laid out here a couple of different alternatives. There could be a number of other alternatives implemented. What this one does, what was proposed in the county executive's budget was a 5-cent increase in year one. And what I'm anchoring to is the $2 rate. $2 reflects what our citizens pay after personal property tax relief for their vehicles. So they have the $3.70 rate, but with tax relief, it ends up being about $2. We do recalculate that every year because it's a fixed dollar amount that's coming to us and the number of vehicles changes over time. So I've anchored into that $2 rate. At that rate, I believe we'll still be competitive with Loudon, although it's something we'll have to look at each and every year. Their tax policy may change, and I certainly wouldn't advise jumping to doing anything other than incremental. That was the advice that we had coming out of PFM when they did the study for us, the tax policy study. Certainly businesses do want to plan, and so we've been trying to work with the data center industry as well, having meetings with them. Those are ongoing right now, and so the 6-year phase-in is sort of what we've anchored to right now, and then what was advertised is that far right column, the $1.35. Each nickel brings in about $836,000 today. That number will grow if data centers continue to build and expand here in the future, and I've showed the split between county and schools.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Angry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If you recall, back in April, I was the swing vote on Chairman Stewart's trying to get to 370 on this. And a big piece was the conversation, just to have the conversations, because I completely agree with incremental increases trying to get to that $2. But I just want to emphasize here to having the conversations with the data centers so we can get on a win-win to get there.
Understood.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Bailey.
Yeah, I concur with Supervisor Angry. I think I applaud you for having the ongoing conversations. I think it's very necessary just in building community relationships and understanding what our needs are specifically for the county, but just building those kinds of relationships. I think you're very smart in doing so and moving forward to our future.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Kalin.
Amen. I've been bringing this up for 4 years now, and it's great to hear some like-minded folks on the board on, maybe I'd be a little bit more aggressive, but as long as there's progress moving towards that goal, that's encouraging. I do want to just make one little point here, and it won't take too long. 86 data centers in Loudoun County, 95 million. It's about 4.5 million per data center. We've got 20 data centers, about 31 million. That's 1.55 million per data center. If we were to charge the same as Loudoun County, we'd bring in $90 million a year, which would completely change Prince William County. I'm not suggesting we go up to 425, but my point is that we're sure looking at increases over the years to the citizens, and I think it's about time that we look at having the data centers shoulder a little bit more of that burden. Thank you.
And I just want, for those people who are watching, I mean, I often talk about the bucket that we charge data centers. We do have the peripherals tax, which is much lower in Prince William County, but our real estate assessments of the data center themselves is actually much, much higher, as we've heard from the data centers. And so you really need to look at that comprehensive bucket to know how much further different we are than our data centers in Loudoun.
I disagree with that, Madam Chair. I've gone back and forth with this. I think there might be something to that, but I've heard that excuse of somehow we've got gold in our water, that we charge so much more here for water, that our land is so much more expensive. I disagree with you on that.
I'm just talking about the operating, if you look at it, I've asked, and we'll provide the idea of the bucket between real estate taxes and the peripheral tax. So, but that's something we can talk about, going forward, I think. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Lawson.
On that note, between Supervisor Canlon and you and the whole discussion, because I certainly, have said to everybody, publicly and in one-on-one conversations, we got to figure out this real estate stuff before we, phase up the computer peripheral. And it's my understanding you've been having those meetings with the industry even recently, correct?
Correct. Yes, we're continuing dialogue with them. We are charged with assessing at market value. There is some judgment in some of that, and so we are in dialogue with them to make sure we understand completely all the facts. Certainly, to the extent we have more information, we consider all of those facts. Oftentimes, data centers or any business can work with us on administrative appeals. We will look at additional information provided, and if we need to make an adjustment, we will, if we deem it warranted. So we are working with them to make sure we understand and have all the information that we need to make an adequate assessment.
Supervisor Brody.
And as we have a holistic conversation about taxes, but data centers in general, we do know that there's more than just taxes that these folks take into consideration. We're looking to locate somewhere. Location in terms of, the fiber wires, location in terms of latency, location in terms of land mass that they can actually build these things. They can't just plop down a data center anywhere and make money. So as we again have a more holistic conversation about what are we charging these folks and making sure, to Supervisor Canlon's point, that they're paying their fair share to the services that we need to pay for, we need to make sure that we're thinking about this holistically in terms of the other things that they need. They've expressed to us from an industry standpoint on why we're attracted to begin with.
Madam Chair. Supervisor Bailey.
I just want to go back and say to Michelle, thank you for having the conversations, and I don't want us to, in going forward in understanding their industry and understanding our community, I don't want us to go forward. I want it to be a collaborative and win-win situation for all of us, and I think it can be. I think it's an opportunity for it to be a win-win, and so let's move in that vein. I'm sure you are. Thank you.
Yep. Here I've listed some of the pros and cons. This came out of the PFM report. I don't think I need to read those to you. There's always the risk that data centers may not come or will relocate elsewhere. The pros of a phased-in approach is it allows them to plan as a business. It does reduce the perceived inequality our residents see by paying the $2 effective tax rate on their vehicles.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Canlon.
Sorry, you can go back a slide, and maybe I missed it. Are any of these recommendations, are any of these implemented in our 5-year plan right now, or these are just something for us to consider moving forward? You're in your 5-year plan, you have it as just continuing at the 1.25.
No, sir, no.
Okay.
What we've proposed is to raise it to the $1.30.
Okay.
And David, remind me, we have that flat line through the 5 years.
Okay, so $1.30 flat line.
But our recommendation is that we do, in fact, increase that in incremental amounts over some number of years to get to the $2.
Okay, okay.
And that's very much balancing a lot of the comments that you've made, balancing the economic development interests that we have also. Data centers are a targeted industry, and we want them to stay, and we want a lot more to come. And that's why we're having conversations for that total impact.
So this is the implementation timeline. If you were to adopt a higher rate, it follows the same as it does at the current rate. It's based on equipment, that computer peripheral equipment that is in place on January 1, 2020. We typically generate the bills in the July to August timeframe, and then those tax payments are due in the October timeframe. Some other items that were included on the county executive's proposed budget as a slide, not included in the proposed budget itself, is the motor vehicle license tax. The PFM study presented some options in comparing us with our peers. This is a license tax that has not increased in Prince William County since 2006. There are some rates that it cannot exceed. They're listed there on the second bullet. About 56% of our vehicles are automobiles. And you'll see here's a listing of our peer jurisdictions that were included in the PFM report, with the median of $30 for autos, $33 for trucks, and $18 for motorcycles. We then also ran the immediate peer group from Northern Virginia, and that's the $33 for autos and trucks and $20 for motorcycles. And then that would generate about $3.5 million. I've also included some alternative rates here, 30 and 18, 27 and 15, and you can see the revenue that would be generated split between the county and the schools. The pros, if you were to implement this, it's a generally affordable tax. The rates would be competitive with your peer jurisdictions. It'd be relatively easy to administer because we already have it in place. I will say that our autos and trucks today are the same rate. If we made those different, it might be a little bit more complexity to administer on our side. We'd have to look at system impacts, et cetera. At the same rate, it's very easy to administer. The cons is this is not a means-tested tax, and otherwise it's not based on the value of the vehicle. It's the same no matter what type of the valued vehicle you drive. Some other information to share. There is an out-of-state license plate fee that could be implemented by ordinance. We'd have to have a public hearing, an advertisement. It is an ordinance that would impose a $100 fee for parking an out-of-state license plate vehicle here in the county, and then it would have a penalty of up to $250 if you enacted that piece of the ordinance. Our peer jurisdictions, you'll see Loudoun implemented this in 2019. Fairfax has implemented the fee in 2010 and the penalty in 2015, and Arlington has just the fee in place. What I will say is they have compliance staff dedicated to this as a revenue source. It's not a large source at $100 a pop. Where the revenues is gained is the personal property tax that may be evaded, but you have to have the staff really to go after and kind of and find the vehicles. They typically aren't parked there during the day; they're at work, and so it probably is a different staffing model than we have today. But we could start out with just that ordinance if this is something the board wanted to do, and we would bill as we get identified violators. What we have found with our tax evader hotline that we did have in place, we took that down, last year, I guess sometime last year, because we really weren't staffed to man it. We had about 100 complaints over the course of a year. We did research those. Only about 11% resulted in additional revenue. The rest were either already paying tax, or had valid reasons for having not paying the tax, i.e. they may be military, et cetera. So it really, in terms of the limited compliance staffing that we had, didn't generate the revenue. Those staff were better utilized looking at larger commercial taxes, et cetera, accounts.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Vega.
Michelle, do we know how much Fairfax received in additional revenue from implementing the work that these 8 employees
Sure.
do?
So Fairfax generated about $3 million. I don't know if that was the first year. Loudoun, for example, they for their first year, they were projecting about $250,000 in their budget. I don't have the results of 2019, what they actually generated. But with staffing over time, it will increase.
So just based on population, hypothetical here, if Prince William County adopted something similar, we could say that perhaps we would generate between $1 to $2 million in revenue?
Closer to 1, probably.
Closer to 1?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take 1 million versus 0. Now, with that being said, could
And I'm not sure if that would be, I'm sorry, I don't know if that would be in year 1.
Okay, do you roughly know what it would cost to staff?
So if we were to staff like Loudoun, we're pretty comparable in population with Loudoun. I think they have 430,000 residents roughly. They have 2, so I don't think we would need more than 2 to start the program out. The staffing cost would be about $90,000 all in. That's a salary plus benefit plus computer and per person. So about $180,000 to start it. I think we would generate and recover that in the first year at least. Like I said, Loudoun was projecting $250,000 in their first year.
Great. And, just to clarify, I hear what my fellow board mates are saying in terms of, identifying needs and how we're going to go about funding those needs. But I'm happy that we're having this conversation because it's my desire that as a board, we get creative as to how we're going to go ahead and fund these needs rather than putting the burden on the taxpayers. And I really like this option instead of taxing law-abiding citizens. So thank you.
So there's just the fee alone. If we had 500 vehicles with out-of-state tags, that would generate 50,000, 770, 1,000, 100,000. Really, where the revenue dollars comes in the personal property side. Some future considerations. The commercial and industrial tax is a revenue option for the board. It does have to be dedicated to regional transportation. It is an up to a 12.5% property tax on commercial and industrial properties. You'll see there the jurisdictions that have that tax in place: Arlington, Fairfax, and Fairfax County. Loudoun does not have the C&I tax in place. This tax would impact all commercial businesses. It would not impact apartments. While they're assessed as a commercial income approach, they are not subject to the C&I tax. Some of the pros here: it would diversify the tax base. It could also be a funding mechanism for your 2019 road bond referendum. $14.2 million in revenue would generate $140 million plus of project cost. The meals tax, I highlight this because there is a bill on the governor's desk, I don't know whether it's been signed yet, that would remove the referendum requirement and perhaps cap it at 6%. Currently, we would have to have a referendum to put this in place, and it's capped at 4%. At 4%, we think it would generate between $28 and $32 million. So it's by far our largest sort of revenue stream that's out there, and it would could be split with the schools. You'll see there's a number of jurisdictions that have it in place. The counties did have to go and put a referendum in place. Cities have the authority to just enact it.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Cannon?
What would happen with Town of Haymarket? They already have a 4% meals tax. If we passed a 4% meals tax, would that mean they'd have 8% therefore in R4, or they're protected from that?
They would stay as is,
As their
and we
own
wouldn't get any revenue from the town.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
The next one is the cigarette tax. Again, this currently today requires enabling legislation, although it is on the governor's desk as well. That gives us the enabling legislation for all counties, and it would max it at 40 cents per pack. At 30 cents per pack, we estimated it would be about $3.6 million. I have not rerun to see what 40 cents would do, but something higher than that. You'll see there the other localities that have a cigarette tax in place. I will note that it does not include vaping products. They are not listed. It is tobacco-related products.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Bailey?
So it doesn't include vaping products on the governor's desk. Is that something that we can explore?
So it is, and it's my understanding there has been proposed legislation related to vaping products that have not got out of committee. Right, have not made it out of committee.
But it is something we can explore.
But it's something you could certainly explore with the General Assembly.
Thank you.
And the last one is the admissions tax. That one, at a 10% ceiling, we would expect it to generate between $2 and $2.1 million. Today, it does need enabling legislation. This is yet another one that is on the governor's desk, and it would give us the enabling legislation if we were to put it in place. And this last calendar is, this last slide is the budget calendar, what's remaining. So you'll see we have school board budget presentation coming up, a number of opportunities for public input, the budget recap, the budget public hearings, markup, and then finally adoption.
Madam Chair. Oh, boy, I'm just good timing with folks today. Just good timing.
Supervisor Franklin.
So thank you for the presentation.
Sure.
So I agree with Supervisor Vega in that we need to become innovative with how we generate revenue throughout the county. 1,000% agree with that, and that means diversifying how we, or which pots that we decide to increase revenue in, essentially. I also want to point out, when we went over the tax relief slides, I want to state for the record, I support all of those tax relief efforts, but also want to just make sure that we're clear that that's revenue that we don't see. And that's in the millions of dollars. I think 30 million or so is what I saw on your slide. So that's $30 million that we don't see, because we are providing tax relief to those in need throughout the county. Want to end by just saying that, you know, we have some tough decisions to make in terms of how do we move Prince William County forward. We've seen the numbers. You've said yourself that we're very similar in Loudoun County in terms of the number of residents that we have, but you know, Loudoun County charges more in taxes for in certain areas. And so we do need to look at what does generating revenue look like in Prince William County? How can we get the services that we need? How can we fund some of these priorities that we will talk about year in and year out, but we'll put a dime here, a nickel there, and never fully fund? And nothing's worse than implementing a program that's not fully funded. That's the worst thing that we could possibly do. It's the most irresponsible thing that we could possibly do, in my opinion. So, I agree with the sentiments of several of my colleagues on the board, but, I do want to point out that we're going to have to figure out how to raise revenue in this county, and we need to go into this process with an open mind.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Canlon.
I haven't read the resolution for the revenue sharing agreement. I'm sorry, haven't read that resolution in a while, since last budget season. Are we able, and I guess it's just a matter of maybe 5 votes, but are we able to, if we institute one of these new taxes, dedicate all that funding to the taxes to the schools? Or we'd have to modify the revenue sharing agreement to do that?
Yes, Madam Chair, members of the board, your revenue sharing policy as it stands, if it still stands, would indicate these were general revenues, the meals tax, the cigarette tax, and based on the current definition, we would share those. However, as you also indicated, you can choose to change that any way you like.
So if there's ever one of these things that we decided that we wanted to have 100% of that fund go towards school funding, it would just take 5 votes to alter that revenue sharing policy to allow that.
Or CS or social services.
Yeah.
Similarly.
Okay, thank you.
And if I may, Henrico, for example, put in place a meals tax, and they did put it for schools. Legally, there's nothing legally that will restrict it. The board policy could restrict it, but it wouldn't prevent a future board from changing that.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you. Okay, so that means we're on to item 6C, an update on the animal shelter project. Ms. Horner has the floor. The floor is yours. Thank you.
My favorite topic.
Thank you, Ms. Horner. Why don't you start?
Sure. Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. My name is Rebecca Horner with the Office of Executive Management. I am back here this week to give you an update on the animal shelter. So that's where we are today. Where we're going in the future in terms of timeline is we expect to issue the contract within the next few days by Friday. By March 18th, have a notice to proceed so that we can achieve the goal of occupancy in fall of 2021 of the new animal shelter building. So just as a reminder, what the board voted on in September of 2017 included these things on the slide. I've presented these twice before to you in the last few weeks. And what is our current situation? I also presented this earlier as well. The current situation is the current design of the building is 25,760 square feet interior programmed space. There is additional outdoor space that's programmed, but this is the interior. It meets all of the industry guidelines and goals that we were set out for ourselves in the beginning of this process. Constructed with durable materials, and we are going to revise some of the interior space. That was a fitness room so that we have multiple separated small animal rooms, so you don't have your hamsters in the same room as your snakes, and birds, things of that nature. And there's also some additional square footage so we can add some offices for future growth in that 500 square foot of what was a fitness space. And there is adequate funds in the project budget to issue the contract for this. And this is generally what that looks like. You've got the purple is generally the animal control spaces. The orange is public spaces like adoption spaces. You've got an area to surrender or intake for animal surrenders. So this adequately addresses the program that we set forth in the beginning of this process. And like I said, it's 25,760 square feet. We're going to reconfigure the existing space internally to address some of the small animal space needs and additional offices. And we're also considering having some kind of a way for future expansion in the future, because we do have a large site and we could do that. And like I said, the project budget is $11.1 million for the construction of the building, not the project budget, the construction of the building. And that's all on target for occupancy of fall of 2021. Now, that current situation does not address all of the goals and objectives that we had, that we envisioned in the original project. So the things that are not included in this construction contract and project at this time include entire site paving, demolition of the existing shelter, some additional furniture, fixture, and equipment, things like bulletin boards, computer equipment, things of that nature, benches, things that are not mission essential but very highly desired, and then the barn for some of those animal control situations, cows, chickens. I guess we have a lot of chickens, roosters. And the total amount for these additional items is approximately $600,000. That's got a little bit of cushion in it because those numbers add up to $585,000. So that's contingency. I will say that on the original couple presentations I gave you before, there were some other items on this list. We took them off this list because there is project budget for them in the current budget. So you don't see the vet equipment in here because that is being funded through the project budget and it's not something that's unfunded at this time. So these are the only things that are unfunded based on what we currently envision for the project. But in addition to that, as we talked about previously, the original goal for the project was around 28,000 square feet. We value engineered some of that out by narrowing hallways and things of that nature. And there was some concern that there wasn't adequate future growth areas for the next 20 years. So if we added square footage in about 2,300 square feet, we would anticipate those areas would be used for offices, kennels, playrooms for the animals, some storage space, and some flex space that maybe could handle surge capacities and things of that nature through time. And we anticipate, we've talked with the architect and not the architect, but the contractor, that's estimated to cost about $1 million to add that square footage into the project. And again, we do want to move forward with the existing contract. We believe and anticipate, depending on what the board would like to do, we could amend the contract once we issue it to include those items into it. But in order to keep the timeline goal of occupancy in fall of 2021, we do recommend that we issue this contract this week. And we do, and I'll have Mr. Martino maybe address some of the budget, but we do believe there is adequate debt capacity to cover the additional 1.6 million to cover these additional needs that we had anticipated in the original project. But we do need to know what the board would like to do. So if the board would like to direct us to move forward with those additional items, I'll let Mr. Martino address how we're going to handle that additional debt capacity.
So, members of the board and Madam Chair, the additional cost that Rebecca just showed us is $1.6 million to take care of everything that was unfunded, plus the additional square footage. So we would need to amend the project budget from the 15.1 by that $1.6 million, so up to 16.7. We had intended to finance this project, and that's was at the point in time when we estimated the budget about 2.8% interest rate. Rates have changed already, and so we think we'd pick up some savings in the financing with a 2.5% financing at this point in time. So that would help in covering the additional costs if we were to finance the additional 1.6 million. That would be about $75,000 a year of additional debt service. And we could cover that because what we have also included as we went through the project and forensic review of it in the recent weeks, our original estimate of operating and maintenance costs before we knew exactly the design of the building was high enough to absorb that additional debt service cost. So we would be basically transferring some of the budget we have built into the 5-year plan from operating and maintenance to debt service, and we could carry the additional debt service on the total project.
Any questions? Go ahead.
All right, Madam Chair.
Supervisor Angry.
Based on this information here, I'd like to direct staff to increase the project budget by 1.6 mil and associated debt issuance in order to accommodate the 2,300 additional square feet, site paving, demolition of the existing shelter, additional furniture, furnishings, and equipment, and the barn. I direct staff to amend the construction contract to include the additional items, as well as amend the architectural and engineering contract to increase the square footage by approximately 2,300 square feet for office, flex space, playrooms, storage, and future growth areas, which will be completed with the construction contract for the new animal shelter building.
Second.
Do you
Madam
want
Chair.
a discussion?
Well, it's a directive, right?
It's a directive.
Well, yeah, I just wanted to thank Mr. Martino and Rebecca for digging into this project and sharpening your pencil and finding, because if I understand you correctly, it's a wash, and what we're increasing on the capital side, we're paying for on the operational side in the 5-year plan?
Well, I want to be careful about calling it a wash. We're increasing the
Okay,
project
maybe.
budget by $1.6 million. We are able to afford the additional debt service with lower operating costs. So that part of it balances, but we are increasing the total project cost.
Right, well, maybe wash wasn't the right
Well, I
way to
understand.
phrase it, but I appreciate you doing that, because I was having heartburn over this project and how we were gonna get it back on track and then pay for it back on track. So I'm glad that you've identified that savings.
Before don't want to object to his directive, I just want to understand that allows us to issue the contract this week and just make modifications. It won't slow down that issuance. Is that correct with his directive?
So what will happen, we will issue the contract. We will immediately begin looking at addendums to the contract to address the reconfiguration of this. And this construction contract, that'll include the barn, the site paving, and some of those things on the construction end, but also the architectural and engineering contract to reconfigure the interior space of that fitness room, but also look at addition.
Okay.
And we'll work with the project team on what that configuration and that program looks like and their need. I think a lot of it probably will be flex space in the beginning so that it's really flexible to meet whatever needs they might have in the next 20 years, but it should accommodate that future growth that was
Just want to make
desired.
sure it didn't slow anything down.
No.
Thank you. It's a priority for the
No.
board, and I just want to make sure whatever he read, that it does what we need to do.
If we didn't
So-
issue the contract today, that would definitely jeopardize the project timeline.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Lawson.
And just to re-emphasize, in case anybody's listening, there will not be a fitness room. We're going to repurpose it. That I'm very happy about.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Vega.
Rebecca, could you please go back to slide 7? How do we get to the 300,000 for furniture?
Like I said, it's a mixture of equipment, interior equipment that was specified by the police department. So this is a number that the police department gave us in order to, bulletin boards, I think maybe there's some shelving in there, benches in the cat rooms and in the, probably the visitation rooms. It's just miscellaneous equipment that's above their minimum need. I think it does include IT equipment. That's a big chunk of it. It's a mixture of things.
Okay, I just want to caution those who are going to be responsible for acquiring this equipment to really make sure that they keep an eye out, because I needed an office chair and I was sent 3 links to choose from, and I think that it is ridiculous that I have the option of getting a $1,300 office chair. And so that's why I'm questioning this number, because if we're talking about saving money and ensuring that we fund the needs of this county, we need to really keep an eye out as to where we're getting these furnishings, this equipment from, because again, there's absolutely no reason for anybody in the county to pay $1,300 for an office chair.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Bodie.
So when you went through your presentation the first time, and first, thank you again for this, and Mr. Martino, thank you for your sharpening your pencil with this. You mentioned that there were some things you guys were able to take out of what was added to what we saw a couple weeks ago, because you were able to find that in the budget. So I assume that included some of the veterinary suite stuff.
Yes.
Some of the really nitty-gritty must-have things that we need to actually give our vets what they need to.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
These are only the things that were of the original, what we originally envisioned, that were not funded. Everything else that we originally envisioned is funded.
So where we are now, these are just the things, it sounds like we've had our directive already to fund it. These are sort of like the luxury things that weren't critical necessarily.
I don't know if I would use the term luxury, but functional.
I say that, though, just to make sure everyone's aware when we're having conversations about choosing office equipment and stuff like that, that these are things that are still must-need regardless of how much they cost. Right.
Right, yeah, Madam Chair, yeah, just to
Yes.
clarify, so the furniture, I mean, I don't know why it costs $300,000, but we should look into that. But these are things that I think were included in the original that may not be included in the contract, and so we're adding these in because most of these, I think all of these are a necessity.
Yes.
Yeah, so, yeah, just want to clarify that. These are all things that we need.
They were all going to be purchased eventually. It was just a matter of trying to figure out where we were going to get the budget and how long we could defer each of these. So these were eventually going to be provided.
Right.
Especially in terms-
What we're trying to do today is get as close to what option C is as possible.
And I think that this does, so. Great. Thank you, Ms. Horner. Thank you for taking the mantle up on this at short notice and doing so well with it. Thank you very much. So that brings us to the county attorney's time. I will turn it over to Ms. Roble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have a few items for discussion in closed session. One will be consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members pertaining to legal advice regarding the architectural and engineering design for the animal shelter contract number 5009714. We will have discussion of reports or plans related to the security of the Owens Governmental Building Complex and the safety of persons using such building complex, including briefings by staff members, legal counsel, and law enforcement or emergency service officials concerning actions taken to respond to related threats to public safety, where discussion in an open meeting would jeopardize the safety of any person or security in any building, facility, or structure. And then consultation with legal counsel and briefings by staff members pertaining to legal advice regarding the Commonwealth of Virginia alcohol beverage control law, along with the accompanying legal advice on actual litigation regarding the Virginia ABC Authority Expedited Consent Resolution Acceptance Order involving incident number 201912181376 by Billy Casper Golf at Forest Greens Golf Course, where such consultation, discussion, or briefing in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position, negotiating strategy, or litigating posture of the public body. These items are appropriate for closed session pursuant to 2.2-3711A 7, 8, and 19 of the Virginia Code.
Thank you, Ms. Roble. Do we have a motion to authorize the closed meeting?
Second.
Do we have any discussion? Please vote.
Vote unanimous.
So that moves us on to item 8, public hearings. I open the public hearing for item 8A, the endorsement of the final design of the Residency Road Shared Use Path as part of the Knoxville Route 28 Phase 3 widening project. If you wish to speak to the potential endorsement, please line up at the podium. No? This closes the public hearing for item 8A.
Madam Chair, I move 8A for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? Please vote.
Vote unanimous.
I open the public hearing for item 8B, the dedication of a portion of county-owned property located 18614 Jefferson Davis Highway for the Marine Cadigan Way project. If you wish to speak to the potential authorization, please line up at the podium. This closes the public hearing for item 8B. Would you like to make a motion? Whose area is it in?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Please vote.
Vote unanimous.
Lastly, I open the public hearing for item 8C, the authorization to condemn and exercise quick take powers to acquire property and various easements on the property located at 9900 Pennsylvania Avenue, 11007 and 11540 Knoxville Road, and 140 and 141 Souter Village in connection with the Route 28 Phase 3 Public-Private Transportation Act project. The plat maps and the current offer price for the items were amended and were shared with the board. You have that in front of you. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak to the potential authorization? If you can line up at the podium. This closes the public hearing for item 8C.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to look to the county attorney and ask if I can move all items forward, or do I need to separate them by motion?
Madam Chair, members of the board, at your seats, there is an amended resolution and plat items because I'll look to Mr. Canizales and Mr. Smith, correct me if I'm wrong, 10040 and 10041 Souter Village Square have been removed, so the board will not be taking action on those two items. But with regards to the other items, the board can move forward with one resolution.
So moved.
As amended at your dais.
Second.
Please vote.
Vote unanimous.
So does that take care of all of them?
Yes.
Okay. So that brings us on to item 9, agencies planning. We have the 2020 initiation of the comprehensive plan amendments. It should be noted that the applicant for item 9A submitted a letter to the planning office requesting deferral of the CPA initiation for CPA 2020-0006 Equal Crossing from the Board of County Supervisors meeting scheduled for today, and asked to be rescheduled for the BOCS meeting scheduled on March 31st, 2020. So that item has been moved for today. So we're on to 9B, the initiation of a CPA 2020-0009, the 2020 County Registered Historic Sites. Mr. Patton of the Planning Office, I believe, is here to come forward and present this item.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Chair Wheeler, members of the board. My name is Justin Patton. I'm the county archaeologist based out of the planning office, and I'm here today to request your initiation for CPA 2020-0009, County Registered 2020 County Registered Historic Sites. These Cultural resources are located countywide, and staff is recommending initiation. This is a very brief presentation that we have. Quickly go over what is a county-registered historic site classification. It's a long-range land use classification. It's designed to protect important cultural resources. It may include buildings, structures, object sites, districts. And these are in the form of architectural sites, archaeology sites, and also landscapes. They are mapped in the long-range land use plan, and they are also described in the cultural resources chapter of the comprehensive plan. A quick map of their location throughout the county. And we have a mixture of sites from Buckland Mill Tavern, Buckland Mill Tavern, to Civil War rifle pits over Neabsco Creek or over Bland's Ford, and Civil War batteries as well. And we are recommending initiation, and that is the conclusion of my presentation.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Lawson?
Thank you. Justin, thank you very much. I appreciate all the work that you have done, you and others in your department, working with the commission, working with board members, and in my particular district, working with the folks. We're working very hard to preserve the Carver settlement. Mm-hmm. And I was thrilled to see that that's on here, as well as Buckland Mill and Buckland Tavern, which preceded everybody, including, I believe, the nation. Anyway, I'll move 9B forward with great enthusiasm. I think it's important that we do what we can to preserve history.
Second.
Any discussion? Please vote.
Vote unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And on to item 9C, the awarding of $69,131,000 for the design-build contract to the Lane Construction Corporation for Prince William County Parkway Interchange at Realign Balls Ford Road Project. Mr. Canizales is going to come forward again and describe the project for us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the board, Rick Canizales, your Director of Transportation. Thank you for the time and opportunity to talk a little bit about this project, but it's a very exciting project. I know, Ms. Lawson, it's in your district, but for us, it's a very exciting project as a county, because this is the first time the county is taking on an interchange and structure project of this magnitude. So we're very excited to get the money and very excited to move forward on it. As you know, the project limits are there. You can see kind of the project outline there. What you see here is existing Balls Ford Road right here. And this is what we're proposing to do here. And as you can see, and we'll talk a little bit about it, but it's a divergent diamond interchange. It's a little south of where the existing intersection is, which will make for some good construction environment and not having to detour, close too many roads and making too many lane shifts. This is the proposed, for Balls Ford Road, not actually the bridge, but this is the proposed typical section for the actual road. You see there, it's a typical that we've been using a lot with the 4-lane divided highway and the 2 pedestrian and bike facilities on each side. What you see here again is the concept plan that was put forth for the proposers. The project was funded from the I-66 concessionaire funds. We did have a total budget, but this includes everything, of $145 million. Our construction budget was looking like $103 million. That's what we had anticipated for construction. The project limits, you can see, are from Doane here on this side of Balls Ford to Devlin Road over here. It's obviously a grade separated divergent diamond. You see a little closer there on the bridge deck. It includes 2 bridges, one here over the railroad tracks and the other one over the Parkway or 234 bypass. You see these are 2 properties that we had to move forward with acquisition, and we're in negotiations now. We will be talking to you next week about dealing with the properties here and with this project. This is where we kind of the timeline we use. We went to preliminary engineering, looking at how to do the bridging documents in order to get a design-build job. We held some public information meetings, and we went through a design-build 2 process procurement. And this is very important, and I'll talk about it real quickly. I won't get too much into the details, but what it did is it allowed us to put out a proposal, a request for the proposals, and qualifications first. So we were able to qualify the companies first, and they were able to get a certain amount of companies that got qualified that we knew could do the project, which created a 3 and 4 person, 3 company kind of design build network. You had 3 or 4 proposals. We started with 4, it went down to 3. But what that did is it made those companies sharpen their pencils, knowing that we had a design build contract here that was an interchange. And what they did is basically, as the 2 processes went through, we're able to value engineer the project. And the reason why I say this is very important is once we got the technical proposals and we received what the bids were, we are right now awarding a project that was supposed to be $103 million at $69.1 million. So you see the value engineering that was done just through the proposal process brought this project down possibly about $30 million from the original, what was considered the engineer's estimate at that time. So I think that was cool. We're trying to use, as we go through more design builds, we'll be using that 2 steps process, and we hope that that drives projects down as in the future as we're moving forward with some of our existing program and possibly some of the bond program that moves forward. This is the project schedule. We're looking to hand the notice to proceed as soon as we get out of this meeting if we award the project. We're looking to do a public hearing again to make sure the public understands what we're doing out here in the summer. We're going to hopefully begin construction here quickly in the fall and trying to get this done because we got a really tight deadline to meet with the 66 improvements that are coming online in the same time we're coming online in December of 22. And that's all I have for you. If you have any questions, thank you very much again for the time.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions for Mr. Canizales?
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Lawson.
Thanks, Rick. I appreciate it. I just want to make sure, I haven't had time to bounce any of this off of Supervisor Canlin. It is predominantly in the Bronxville district, but it's right on the border, and part of it is actually in the Gainesville district.
Vital piece.
What's that?
Vital piece.
Yes, yeah. But anyway, I just wanted to make sure you're good with this and moving this forward.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Canlin.
I think this is a great project. You look at the whole Ballsford area, Ballsford Road corridor, at least on the Gainesville side, I'll speak to. Over the last 10 years, the county has made a tremendous investment on economic development in this area. You go there now versus what you saw 10 years ago, and it really blossomed into a great kind of light industrial, but a lot of jobs along there. So this is an important project, not only for that, but then also I think even more significance, it's going to free up that bottleneck there at Ballsford Road and Prince William County Parkway, which is, I think, going to impact almost every single one of our constituents in that you come down there and you just have to slam on those brakes to get onto 66. This is an exciting project, I think, for all of us on the board, and I think this is going to be a huge benefit for people of Prince William County. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Canlin. That's very correct, but I also want to mention that because of the $69 million price tag and the savings that we're able to deal with this design build process, we are asking right now VDOT and MVTA to see if we can extend the project limits to be able to actually do some of the work on Devlin. And that will be a nice corridor, like you mentioned. If we can get something from either University or Linton Hall on Devlin all the way to Sudley on a new alignment, or these 2-lane roads with bad intersections that existed before will be 4-lane roads with a modern interchange that's actually very alternative and a great design, I think, on a divergent diamond.
Madam Chair.
Supervisor Canlin.
If I could just also make one other point, is this is also important because you're going to have, I think, one of the key commuter lots in Prince William County.
Yes,
this
sir.
will be the last one in the county before you get into Fairfax.
Yes, sir.
People will have direct access onto the Easy Pass lanes and bus service. So, I mean, I think it's just a great project all the way around. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your hard work on this. Can I hear
Thank
a
you very much,
motion
Ms.
to approve do we have a motion to authorize Mr. Canizales or his designee to sign the contract between Prince William County and Lane Construction Corporation?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? Please vote.
Vote unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So we are now on to supervisors' time. First up, we have appointments to boards, committees, and commissions. Do we have a motion to approve the appointments of item 10A through 10AA?
Madam Chair, so moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Please vote.
Vote unanimous.
Thank you. We will now go back around the dais for magisterial district updates and notices of intent to appoint. Yeah, Ms. Lawson, do you want to start?
Thank you. Just to kind of, without sounding like I'm repeating myself, we just added historical sites to the comp plan. And I'm just really excited about how important it is to preserve history. I absolutely love living in a county with a rich history. And on that note, there is a historic symposium on Saturday, March 21st, from 8:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. at the historic courthouse on Lee Avenue. And if you are somebody who loves to learn about history, and specifically Prince William County history, I encourage you to attend that. I can't make it, but I went a little bit last year, and it was really interesting. And then, Madam Chair, we received actually a couple calls from the Planning Department to formalize the Ag and Forest District, the Bronxville Supervisor. I've served on it. I think my predecessor served on it, but I believe we have to formalize my service on the Ag and Forest District. Can we do that right now, or I'll abstain, or does anybody care? Does anyone want to serve on the Ag and Forest?
Do we have to give notice would be my only question, like a notice of intent, but we can waive those rules
You
if
can waive it and
everybody's
do
okay
it
with
right
waiving
now.
those
Yeah,
rules?
Absolutely. Yep, if
Okay.
somebody wants to make a motion to waive and appoint Supervisor Lawson to that,
Madam
that'd
Chair.
be just fine.
Supervisor Bailey?
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Please vote.
Vote unanimous. Motion passes 7-1. Supervisors Angry, Bailey, Bodie, Canlin, Franklin, Vega, and Wheeler voting aye. Supervisor Lawson abstain.
I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Supervisor Bailey?
How about that? Thank you, Supervisor. I mean, Madam Chair, I'm sorry. This past Sunday, my staff and I had the opportunity to visit two churches, Ebenezer Baptist and Mount Zion Baptist Church, and had a wonderful time just saying thank you for level of support in the community. Last week, my chief of staff had the liberty of attending the Dumfries Town Council meeting where we learned about their vision and how they're moving forward. And it was exciting and good news. I held an appointee meeting with all of my current appointees to discuss specific needs to the district and pull them together as a team, and the library and aging and social services, all those entities. Also had a wonderful meeting last week at the PRTC with our chair, Supervisor Franklin, to discuss the proposed budget, and it was a good, robust discussion. I think we have a way ahead in terms of how we're going to serve. Upcoming events, I have a virtual town hall this Saturday, March 14th, at 2 p.m., and it's viewable on all social media outlets. Hopefully, my special guest will be Delegate Jennifer Carroll Foy, so I'm looking forward to that. Constituent concerns, if you have any. I'm so proud of my constituents that came in this afternoon just to talk about their concerns and lend their engagement here. But contact us at wsmith1@pwcgov.org. My intent to appoint, I would like to make a notice of intent to appoint Neil Hampton to the DCSM Zoning Ordinance Advisory Committee. And miscellaneous comments. March is Women's History Month, and congratulations to us, all of our leaders, and that's gone before us and current. March 29th is Vietnam Veterans Day, and it's a day to give thanks and honor to all our nation's veterans, Vietnam veterans, of which my godfather was one, and their families for their service and sacrifice. And then March 19th is the first day of spring, so let's have at it. Social media, yesterday, the Bailey Bugle announced for the month of March, and it went out just regarding, of course, and I thank the staff as well, the coronavirus. So there's a press release that I issued there. And I urge everyone to subscribe to the Bailey Bugle to get more information coming forward. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Supervisor Bailey. Supervisor Angry?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I guess I'll start with my notice of intent to reappoint Ramunda Young to the Human Rights Commission, Nichi Namaha Ono to the Architectural Review Board, and Lillian Garland to the Committee for Persons with Disabilities. And I'd like to appoint Mary Beth Michaels to my strategic plan, or to the strategic plan appointee. And the resume's all been sent to you. And let's see, so yeah, I'll say my budget team is up and running. This is their second meeting, so things are going well there, and we should have a product ready for discussion soon. Friday, February 28th, I attended Neabsco Elementary School Career Day, and I want to, first of all, congratulate all the kids that were there, but I met their student council. And the student council is very important because all of those young kids were voted into office by their peers. So they were on their pathway to, being super elected officials. So it was really cool to hang out with them for the morning. Super elected officials. And that was good. So this Saturday, you've heard already the two things going on. One is the Veterans Pop-Up. That's going to be over at Fire Station 13. That's Hillendale Road there on DeSanto Hall, which is in the back. And then also you heard about the St. Patty's Day Parade, Manassas. Now, they're both kind of around the same time, so you're going to have to probably shoot from one to the other. But, I think you can make them both, and I'd be really excited to see you there and try to catch up with me. And then lastly, I would like to, without objection, I'd like the county executive to add the circuit court clerk budget needs identified in this year's budget Congress for 4 full-term employees in 2021 and to the proposed budget for consideration. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Mr. Martino.
Yes, that's an interesting directive, and I can include that at recap, but there's no revenue source for it identified. It might be appropriate for the board to take that up at markup when you're considering everything that's going to be put on the table. That would be my suggestion, Mr. Angry.
Okay, I'll follow your suggestion on that. So that's good. We'll just take it to markup.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Supervisor Franklin.
Yeah. I want to first by asking that maybe we consider moving supervisors' time up in the agenda, just so a lot of our constituents show up, in the beginning, and by the time we get to this, which is to me one of the most important parts, we're talking to staff and our security. Thank you, security. But I will go ahead and give my report. Last week was National Breakfast Week, and so I had the opportunity to visit Marumsco Hills Elementary as well as River Oaks Elementary, along with Caitlin Page, who's Ms. Prince William County. So we had a wonderful time with the students there and meeting the cafeteria staff. And we have a lot of Title I schools in my district, and so we had a great time just eating breakfast with the kids and reading to them. They asked a lot of questions, a lot of personal questions, a lot of tough questions, and so we had a good time there. I also went to Featherstone Elementary about 2 weeks ago to read to them and to speak to them about my career and why I do the things that I do and the importance of community service. I'll also be going to Belmont Elementary on Friday at noon. I believe it's a reading program that I'll be part of, and so that'll be fun. We also hosted our first mobile office hours, where we host office hours outside of the office and at a small business, and so we were at Red Mango in Stonebridge. We will do our second one on the 24th from 1 to 4 at Donaterra Restaurant, which is off of Route 1, where Americana Groceries is. So please stop by there. That should be fun. And that's actually March 27th from 1 to 4. So that will be our second office hours, mobile office hours location. Also, my staff was able to attend a meeting that Senator Kane hosted with the community regarding what he's been doing and what he's learned about disaster relief efforts, particularly from Hurricane Maria and Irma. In my district, we have a large Latino population. There's a large Puerto Rican population in Northern Virginia. So that's why that meeting was important. Upcoming events, again, mobile office hours on the 24th at Donaterra. We also have on, let's see, March 12th, a meeting with the VDOT and Belmont Bay residents, and really it's open to the public to talk about the intersection at Annapolis Way and Route 1 and what VDOT is doing to make that area a lot safer. So please come out to that. And then also I'm doing a meet and greet with Belmont Bay residents also on the 12th at 7 p.m. So feel free to come out to that. It's going to be at the Ospreys. And then also I'm doing a meet and greet at Newport with the Newport HOA. It's actually a meeting to get to know those residents at 7 p.m. on March 11th. And then also we're doing a meeting with the Potomac Club residents Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. to talk about they call it a pond, but it's really not a pond, but now it's just a big hole in the earth is the way it looks. And so we're going to talk about, what to do with that and how residents can really encourage their HOA to kind of build upon that. So that's what we will be talking about there. And lastly, on April 29th, we are working with our Commonwealth Attorney, Amy Ashworth, to host a discussion about the importance of a public defender's office here in Prince William County. Our chair will be speaking at that event, and we'll partnering with a couple other organizations in the community. So that's April 29th at Nova from 7 to 9 p.m. And I've invited my colleagues, and so hope to see everyone there. Thank you.
Supervisor Canlin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I can't really see the buzzer. So, Janine, if you could maybe flag for me when that's, because it's right going on my vision here. Anyway, just let me know when that's gonna go. I'd like to give a directive, if I could, to help so the planning office could bring back to the board for our consideration. Our zoning ordinance today allows for by right expansion of non-conforming uses up to 25%, which can be significant when you're talking about uses that can have a large impact on neighboring properties. It appears there may be many opportunities to tighten up these expansions in order to protect adjacent property owners. Therefore, without objection, I'd like to direct county staff to amend and bring back to us for our consideration Section 32-601 .327B of the zoning ordinance regarding expansion of non-conforming uses in order to tighten up the ability for non-conforming uses to expand by right. So talking to planning staff about this, it just gives us an opportunity to look at that language to make sure that there aren't situations where there might be some by right expansion of non-conforming uses, which could have a significantly negative impact on our community. So I'm just asking for them to update the language and bring it back here for us to consider.
Well, I kind of like to add to the directive because non-conforming uses keeps on coming up. And actually, it's actually the exact opposite in that someone who has had a non-conforming use for 20 or 30 years and then wants to do the exact same thing and now can't do it, even though it's been there for 30 years, which to me doesn't always make sense. And so, I'm sure that they're busy with budget time, but maybe a discussion of all non-conforming uses in the county might be useful because I was going to bring up non-conforming uses anyway.
I think that's a great idea. I would like to see if we can get this component of it fast-tracked a little bit more.
Is there a reason?
There is. There's how much I want to get into it. Well, I guess I can get into it. I know you guys, so. But we and I hope this doesn't count against my time because I still have a lot more to say of the matter.
Can you stop his timer?
But we've got a specific situation where we have a data center use where the community was not in support for that usage. This loophole would allow another data center to be built by right without this board being able to weigh in on that. And so I'm asking if we can tighten up the language a little bit to remove I'll tell everyone. Right now, they could build another data center on that Haymarket property. The one that we've had this big fight over the last 3 or 4 years, they could theoretically build another data center there by right because of the 25% expansion that they're allowed to have. And so I'd like to have us look at language that would tighten that up a little bit because we don't want to have another situation where another set of power lines are being built out for a non-conforming use.
So in that specific, you said that there were people who objected to the data center being built there at all. Was that neighbors? I don't think so. I think it was just general public because of the power lines.
Yeah, it was almost everyone in my district. It was
but-
almost everyone in Supervisor Lawson's. I mean, it was thousands of people.
But it was also that the idea that was to stop the power lines. The power lines are now coming in, they're being ungrounded, we're spending millions of dollars, and you don't want to let them expand. So I'm just trying to understand why you would do that.
Because we've been briefed that the capacity of that current line can only hold so much. And so when this was part of all of Gainesville Crossing that we just went through, is there are some people who feel like just with Gainesville Crossing, they're concerned that a new power line is going to have to be built. Now you're going to be able to, by right, add another 20 or 25% capacity out there with another data center. That worries a lot of folks. Madam Chair, as I've heard before, you're more than happy to disagree with it.
Yeah.
Please,
So
I'd like to
I
give this the directive to get the language for this board so we make sure that we don't have another Haymarket situation where we've got thousands of people who could potentially be negatively impacted. And in addition to, I believe that Delegate Rome's legislation passed, which won't allow above ground power lines in that corridor. So they'd have to bury power lines, which would now open up, in many people's concerns, that they would look at other corridors to build above ground power lines, since they can't do above ground on that existing Gainesville corridor anymore. So they'd go above ground up Route 15 past Dominion Valley. That's a concern that a lot of folks have.
So I won't object to your directive, but I will say I think it's wrong to change zoning just to block. It's a reactive kind of zoning just to block a certain customer from doing something. I think we need to talk about their merits more because, I know there are people who say that, that line might run out of power, and I've actually talked to people about this, that we need to have people who are qualified to make that determination, not just someone say, my calculations, say that's going to run out of power. And I don't want to operate it as a board just doing business by what people say. I want to hear what perhaps, Dominion might say about the capacity of those lines before we go ahead and do a specific zoning ordinance change to block a business. But I won't object to the directive so we can discuss it further. I'm just sort of going on record as saying I don't know if that's the best way to handle. I just don't think that's perhaps the best way to handle it.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree with that, or I don't agree with that. I understand your position. I want to go on record that I 100%, if I can go higher than 100%, I would disagree with building additional data centers over there at the town of Haymarket that could possibly build more power lines. So I guess since we're all declaring stuff, I want to make sure that I declare that.
Yes.
But then also remember that we changed or modified our zoning to do the data center overlay district, where that was restricting businesses, but to try to give them a little bit more play, because we wanted as a board and as a community to better direct where data centers were going to go in the county.
I completely understand. I won't object to the directive. We can discuss it. I'm sure we will discuss it at length in the future. So That's good. Thank you very much. Were you done? No,
No, I'm just getting started.
You're just getting started. Okay.
I'm just getting started here.
Okay, there you go.
So I guess Tower back on. Without objection. Real quick, I just have a couple comments. Budget time is always a difficult time. It's where this board, as Supervisor Franklin talked about very eloquently, this is where we discuss the needs and the wants of the community and try to balance that and try to figure out a way to do that. But I think there's always a constituency that each year I want to make sure they get spoken for, and that's the taxpayer. We always hear, I think we could have just endless supply of wants and endless supply of needs, but I think we have to remember that this money comes from the residents of Prince William County, and I think there's few responsibilities I take greater than this board taking people's money. And every dollar, as I know many of you are either have run small businesses or work for businesses, every dollar that we take is one less dollar that families can spend on themselves, one less dollar that businesses can spend on growing their business. I put out a petition recently to get people to ask their opinions on the potential tax increase, and I'll submit, and if anyone wants to see this, I'll submit it to the clerk for record. We had over 1,300 Prince William County residents sign the petition asking us not to increase their taxes, and I wanted to read just a couple emails that I got just to make sure that they're in record. For us to consider. This is for a woman who lives in the Gainesville district. As a 45-year resident in 4 different locations in Prince William County, I have paid enough. At 80, widowed, going blind, I need to retain as much money as possible for health care, so do not touch retirement savings. I rent a basement apartment for bus trips, frills, and helping grandchildren through college. Another person wrote, for me personally, I bought my house in Haymarket in 2005 and think my taxes then were about $3,500. Now they're approaching $5,500, and my house is worth less than in 2005. I just can't replace the income fast enough to afford continuing to live here. My wife has not gotten a raise in 3 years, and my salary adjustments are less than the rate of inflation. I just hope as we go through this process that we remember and keep in mind that tax increases impact real families, real businesses in Prince William County, that if we need to raise, if the board needs to raise taxes, that we do it very seriously and very deliberately, because it really does impact people's lives. I remember as a young couple coming out of college debt, student loans, we didn't have much money. $500 a year or $350 a year, which is what the average tax bill is looking at, would be a significant impact on me and my family. So my hope is that we just all remember that during this process. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Supervisor Bodie?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wanted to start with a couple of notices of intent to appoint, starting with Dr. Andrea Wilson to the Social Services Advisory Committee and reappointing Jim Burgess to the Historical Commission. Wanted to give some brief updates to what's been going on with my office and the Occoquan District in general. Last week we had quite a few things going on in our office. So on Monday of last week we had Boy Scouts PAC 295. As part of getting credit towards their advancement, they were tasked to speaking with an elected official. They chose me. And what was originally only supposed to be slated about 45 minutes, an hour conversation turned into an hour and a half. They grilled me and asked me questions anywhere between trash collection to recycling to environmentalism to renewable energy to how I got to be here to begin with. Very, very engaged group. And then about halfway through, the parents started jumping and asking me questions too. So I had my sort of first mini town hall impromptu in my office. Tuesday of last week, we had our first budget committee meeting for the Occoquan District. We divvied up sections of the budget for folks to really dig into. We have a great diverse set of folks from all sort of disciplines looking at the budget. And like Supervisor Angry, we'll start to have deliverables on that for the board to consider. Wednesday, I had my open house for my office. Close to 60 folks from the community, almost all of them Occoquan District residents, came to my office. I actually only got to stand in one place, and people sort of came to me and asked me tons of questions, things like that. Really, really good stuff. Looking forward to more community engagement in the future. I've also been speaking to the folks from Kaiser. As folks know, down the street from my office, Kaiser is setting up shop. They're on track, and I'm really, really excited to welcome them into the district. I've also got a chance to visit the Bright Center, which is taking care of a very, very at-risk, very needed population in our community. Really kudos out to the folks that are doing great work there. I also went to the Engage Gala on Sunday. Really great group doing really good advocacy for the Muslim community throughout the entire region. Was happy to show my support there alongside some other elected officials. Also went to, on Saturday, a domestic violence seminar, which actually held in Supervisor Bailey's district. It was a really good event that sort of brought together a lot of different thought leaders dealing with domestic violence on local, state, and federal level. And it was really, really good. Last couple things. been working on the dog park that's down the street from my office. We have some good improvements that we're planning on putting into place there. We also are working with the community down the Rolling Brook Drive community to put in some traffic calming measures on that old bridge corridor off of there too. So we have a lot of things rolling out in the Occoquan district. And in terms of looking ahead, we have a town hall on the 19th of this month. I mentioned it before, but in addition now is our school board member, Lily Jesse, will be joining me. So we'll have a good holistic discussion on budgets in terms from a school standpoint and the county budget standpoint. And with that, I cede back. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Supervisor Bodie. Supervisor Vega.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First off, I just want to congratulate the Colgans Girl High School basketball team on a great season. They lost in the state quarterfinals by 1 point. That kind of hurts a little. However, the future looks promising as they will only be losing 2 seniors to the team. So I strongly believe that next year they're going to bring it all the way home. So congratulations to our girls over at Colgan High School. On February 27th, my team got to tour the Lake Jackson Dam. I will touch on that in just a minute. Agency department meetings. I enjoyed meeting with the various department and agency heads over the last few weeks to learn more about the services that these agencies provide and their budget requests. I also enjoyed getting to spend some time meeting with our Deputy County Executive, Elijah Johnson. Upcoming community events, Lake Jackson Town Hall. First, we're going to have a town hall with the Lake Jackson community this Thursday evening at 7 p.m. So for our Lake Jackson community, I hope that you can come out to the volunteer firehouse. As many of you know, we're going to be talking about road maintenance and also the dam. If you have any concerns regarding these 2 issues, I hope that you can make it so that we can address those concerns. Also, a little update on the Bronxville Interchange public meeting. It's going to be held on Wednesday, March 25th. Transportation will be hosting a public information meeting also at the Lake Jackson Firehouse at 6:30 p.m. to discuss the Bronxville Interchange in the Coles District. So I hope anyone who has questions about this interchange will also come out. Mr. Canizales will also be in attendance to help answer any questions that you may have. Also, a little update on the Dar al-Noor expansion. The next day following the Bronxville Interchange public meeting, we're going to have our town hall. That's going to be Thursday, March 26th. And I believe that Supervisor Bodie, Supervisor Angry, Madam Chair, are you going to also be attending?
I believe, are we doing it all together or is it your meeting? Where are we doing it as all joint meeting?
Yes.
Yes, then I'll be attending.
And so we're really looking forward to hearing from our constituents who are going to somehow be impacted by this project. So if you have any questions about this as well, I highly recommend that you show up. The applicant will be providing us with a presentation, and then we are going to follow by opening up the floor for questions. We're going to be in attendance, so if you have any questions, department heads will be there so that they can answer those questions. And finally, we have our open house coming up. I want to just thank our citizens over in the Coles District for their patience. We are undergoing some office renovations, but we're very close to completing those renovations, and we're looking forward to having an open house and having you all come in so that you can meet our staff and ask any questions that you may have. And with that, I also just want to give a shout out and say thank you to Fred, Marina, and John. Those are the members of my staff. As we all know, as supervisors, we have our work cut out for us. Budget season is an extremely busy time, and I certainly cannot do it without my staff. So I know they're watching because they always watch. And I just want to say thank you, guys. I appreciate everything that you do, and I feel extremely blessed to have you on board. With that, I yield back my time.
Thank you, Supervisor Vega. I will try to be quick. Last week I kicked off National Read Across America Day by reading Daisy Had Maisie to 4th grade students at John Jenkins Elementary School. Thank you to Principal Coleman and Ms. Ernest Jenkins for having me and my staff. It was an afternoon well spent celebrating the joy of reading. On Tuesday evening, I attended the Prince William Living celebration of 5 influential women in our county. Congratulations again to Lori Buckman Moore, Uma Bipat, Paige Mead, Christina Noe, and Robin Conrad Sturm. On Wednesday, I completed my first food rescue with Aaron Tolson, who oversees the program for ACTS. We picked up over 300 pounds of food from Wegmans and delivered them to the Trillium Center. If you've not completed a food rescue, I encourage you to do so. You can learn more by visiting my Facebook page. The sign-up is simple and the process is very rewarding. On Friday, I joined Ms. Prince William Caitlin Page also at Kirby Elementary School for an empowerment conversation with young women during breakfast time. They were trailblazers, and we had a fantastic discussion of dreams and aspirations and the importance of breakfast. Lastly, I wish to provide my notice of intent to appoint the following individuals, and some of these are just some that flows through the chair's office at our staff appointments, so it's a little bit, a little bit long. Mike Miguel Beatty to the Animal Advisory Council, Ed Dander to the Prince William County Trails and Blueway Council, Eric Feigerholm to the Wetlands Board, Brenda Johnston to the Prince William Arts Council. That's a replacement for someone I had previously appointed who had to resign due to a work commitment. Orlando Jones to the Cherry Hill Community Development Authority. Amy Latilda Fulton to the Prince William County Trails and Blueways Council. Gregory P. Smith to the Joint Recreation Center Advisory Board, Freedom Center. Sergeant Ryan Whaley of the Prince William County Police Department to the Prince William County 457 Deferred Compensation and 401 Money Purchase Plan Board of Trustees. Sergeant Jacob Kushner to the Towing Ordinance Advisory Board. Officer Jason Van Horn to the Towing Ordinance Advisory Board. Officer Brandon Fields to the Towing Ordinance Advisory Board. And Christian Tom to the Parks and Recreation Committee. With that, I believe we will now leave the board chambers for closed session.
Madam Chair?
Supervisor Lawson.
I'm sorry, thank you. Real quick, maybe your aide didn't have time to discuss former Police Captain Greg Smith, reappointing him as...
Gregory P. Smith to the Joint Recreation Center Advisory Board.
I'm sorry, that's what I get for texting and trying to listen. Thank you.
Okay, I thought maybe I wasn't, I was worried that I wasn't supposed to do that, and all of a sudden I did. So we got him covered. So a lot of these just flow through our office at people's requests. So with that, we will go into closed session. Thank you.